Good morning, everyone. Robin Shea here. Welcome to day 4 of Before the Fork, the 28-day experience. Today's D-Day. Today is the day that we launch into our new food program, and we embrace all 6 pillars of change, and we are now stepping into day 1 of phase 2. Let me make sure I wrote that down right. Morning. Well, I didn't put it there, but I'll go back and add that. This is actually the first day of phase 2. Good morning, Kim. So glad to see you there this morning. Today I want to talk about, hi Tammy. This morning I want to talk about the 3 sciences that we're blending together. And I also want to heighten your awareness of some of the initial things that you're going to encounter today, tomorrow, the following days as we move through the 28 days together. And the first thing I want to talk about is when I went through my transformation and I collapsed. Good morning, Marjorie. Oh, the game. It was a blowout. South Warren is a fantastic football team, and it was a blowout. Actually, it was a state record. It was 51-0. So it wasn't really much of a game, but thank you for asking. Rowdy played great. I felt kind of bad for the other team, but you know, it's football, and that happens sometimes at football. Okay, so when I collapsed in that hallway, and I was graced by all of God's glory and his ability to heal what otherwise seems unhealable. And I rose a different person. I knew that the spiritual science of transformation was, it was everything. I knew that transformation, true transformation that is deeply rooted in life-affirming joy and happiness and gratitude. I knew that that was God at work in my life. But I also recognized as I moved through my own personal transformation that just because I stood up from the hallway and from my brick floor, and I stood up, and just because I knew that my heart had been changed, my body still had to catch up. So although my mind was changed and my heart was changed, I still had this human machine that was so deeply rooted in patterns of behavior that had to be harnessed and redirected. And that's why I spent so many years. I'm not a trained neuroscientist. I'm not a trained behavioral scientist, but I am a devoted mother and a lifelong student. So as I started putting the pieces of this puzzle together, I realized that spiritual science was in play, neuroscience was in play, and behavioral science was in play. And those are the 3 sciences that come together. Hi, Melissa. Hi, Tammy. And hi, Teresa. I'm so happy all y'all are here. So I knew that those 3 sciences were what came together to form this unbreakable commitment to the transformation process. Now, for those of you that may or may not know or have not heard this story before, I tell it with a lot of love. I tell it with a lot of gratitude. But at the time going through it, that's not necessarily what I saw. My 3rd son, Rylan, is such a beautiful soul. Anyone that knows Rylan absolutely adores him. He is such a good boy, such a good man, such a big heart. But when he was a little boy, I knew from the first breath that child took into the world that he was going to be my challenge. He was just a little bit different than his 2 brothers at the time. And he's full of more energy and more life force than most any of us. So come to find out, Rylan does have classic ADD. Now, it can be your biggest blessing or it can be your biggest curse, all depending on how you learn to cope with it. Well, this isn't a judgment against anyone that has chosen to put their child or themselves on any kind of ADD medicine. So it's not a judgment. I just want to throw that out there. Our family has personally experienced a tragedy related to medicating a child with ADD. So I knew that that was never an option for me. So when Rylan was a little boy and I made this discovery, I dove very deep into behavioral science because I wanted to provide him with behavioral support because I knew that medication was not an option for me. And so through that, we realized that's when I talk about shrinking your food world, that comes directly from me shrinking Rylan's world when he was a little boy. He functioned so much better when his parameters were very tight around his behavior. The second that those fences got too far away from him, he got wily. He got wily-eyed. He couldn't harness himself and come back in. So as I was moving through and creating the whole Before the Fork system, knowing that behavioral science was a piece of that puzzle, I had a foundation where I saw it work in my own child's life. And then I realized that we have the spiritual science that gives us the emotional energy. We have the neuroscience, and the neuroscience that's the happiness ladder in its most simplistic form. That is neuroscience at work. So every time we elevate our emotions and we're pulling ourselves out of these negative thought cycles and thought loops, and we learn to move up the happiness ladder, we're not just doing that for joy. We're doing that for chemical support throughout our bodies. So remember, these low vibration emotions, and I believe we have a graphic for that. These low vibration emotions, they also release with them a lot of toxicity from a neurochemical, a biochemical perspective. So swimming around in your body, you're bathing all of your organs, all of your vascular system in chemicals that are catabolic, which means they're chemicals that break down. The higher you move up that happiness ladder, so to speak, and the more you learn to release joyful chemicals, and the more you realize that you can create positive thought loops despite the situation in your life. It may knock you off balance for a minute, but when you learn to start climbing up that ladder and you learn to start releasing these positive chemicals that are all found at the top of the happiness ladder, now you're bathing your organs, you're bathing your vascular system in life-affirming chemicals. So they're no longer the catabolic breakdown. Now you're bathing your body in hormones that support restoration, replenishment, connectivity. So that's the neuroscience. Now I want to look a little bit further into the behavioral science this morning. And if you have your computer open, or if you don't, I would love for you to go back and look at this. And it's the handout that is marked BTF_manual.pdf. So this is straight out of the student handbook. And I have it pulled up on my computer. And I want to go down. Let me see the page that we're going to go down to. Okay. It's part of Get Real because this is the first day in phase 2, and it's Get Real with Your Resistance. So that's what you're going to be coming up against today and the next couple of weeks that we're in phase 2. You're going to be feeling so much resistance because what we're basically doing, let me come down here. Okay. The page number is page 7, and it's what I want you to look at. This is behavioral science at work. Behavioral science from the red zone versus behavioral science from the green zone. Okay. So if you're on page 7 of the student manual, the first thing you're going to see is a mind out of sync. And that's depicted by this elephant and this little human. And that's how you have to perceive your hindbrain, which is what we're training. It makes up 85% of the capacity in your brain. You operate off of that hindbrain versus the small percent of the prefrontal cortex, which is that's where the habits start. And then we want to move them to the back brain, to the hindbrain. But if we have habits that don't serve us, that are already deeply rooted in that hindbrain, then what we have to do is we have to engage the prefrontal cortex, the front of our mind. We have to engage that, consciously engage that, and do it in such a way that the hindbrain wants to cooperate. And we do that through the positive emotions. Okay, so the first image is from the red zone. When we're trying to redirect our habits from the red zone, we're completely out of sync. We're fighting to make that round peg fit in that square hole, or vice versa. We're fighting ourselves. Once you start incorporating some of the techniques to soothe your mind and to get into the green zone, excuse me, you'll have the capacity to reassure your hindbrain. I got you. Trust me. Let's do this together. Let's move through these steps together. I know you want to do that. I know you want to soothe me with the chocolate cake, but that doesn't ultimately serve us. So you're kind of the parent to your hindbrain, recognizing that everything that it has programmed in it is to keep you safe, to soothe you, to make you feel better, the only way that you've known how up to this point. Okay? So we want to take the teacher, the parent, the minister, the person that I always look at it as the big sister, little sister relationship. That loving big sister, which I was blessed with a fantastic big sister, only wants what's best for that younger sister. So treat that your prefrontal cortex is looking out for little sister or little brother. And you have to talk it off the ledge every now and then. And you have to soothe it. You don't have to, how about the big sister? I think my big sister and I squabbled. But once we hit a certain age, man, she was everything to me. She let me go places with her. I was never a bother to her. We shared a room. We listened to the same music. We bonded over everything that was difficult in our world. She was, and still is to this day, my very best friend. So create that relationship, a steward relationship between your big sister and your little sister. Now, as you start to move through this and your hindbrain starts to trust that you are guiding it in the right direction. If you'll look at the second slide or the second picture there, rather than miscommunication through red zone emotions, you're going to be moving into a more confident forward motion with your hindbrain. It's going to want to say, okay, what's next? What are we doing next? Tell me, give me my itinerary for where we're going next. You're going to start getting this cooperative aspect to, okay, now we're going to try this tip. Well, that didn't work. That didn't really sit well. So, okay, so now rather than judging the tip, we're going to go on and we're going to try another tool to help us move through these temptations. So now you have the hindbrain that's working with you, wanting to know what's coming next. And the final image that I have that I feel is so powerful is when you're on the verge of giving up. You've given it all you can. You've worked with that round peg and you've tried to fit it in that square hole, and you're getting so ready just to throw the towel in, throw the whole game away. That is a red zone response to dieting from the red zone. You're destructive. It's chaotic. You want to quit. You can't wait to just run back to all those soothing, self-destructive behaviors. They may be self-destructive, but they feel better than continually fighting with your hindbrain. It is such an unpleasant way to change your life. Versus the green zone, where now all of a sudden you have this cooperative element between your forebrain and your hindbrain, and it's sheer gratitude that you have found other ways to soothe yourself that serve the highest idea of yourself. So I didn't really mean to get so deep into the behavioral science this morning, but it is everything. We have the spiritual science. That's your desired self story. We have the neuroscience. That's your happiness ladder. That's your emotional response to change. Now, the work is in harnessing that elephant, harnessing the side that runs your life. It's everything. We have such a small percentage of our life that we're actually conscientious of what we're doing. I think in that in this graphic here, I have that broken down. If I can't find it, I'll post it up later. But it's something like 2% of the time in a given day are we actually operating. I'm reading right now, so if you see my eyes tracking. Okay, yes, 5% of your behavior is conscious. 95% of what we do on the daily is subconscious behavior. So if that subconscious was programmed not to serve the desired self-story that we have created, imagine what your success rate is going to be if you don't learn to work in compliance and in congruity with that hindbrain. Okay, so that's why the behavioral aspect of this, hi Michelle, is so very important. Okay, before we wrap up, I'm at 16 minutes. I don't want to go past 20. Be conscientious of the hindbrain taking over. Okay, so it's going to require you to engage that little 5% prefrontal cortex. You're gonna gotta step up your game. You gotta have a timer on your phone that says check yourself before you wreck yourself. So you gotta be so aware of what you're doing on the daily. And remember what I told you a couple of days ago. When you engage that part of your mind and you're moving into this transformation, you are training your mind as an athlete trains his body. This takes a tremendous amount of energy, a tremendous amount of focus. You're going to be depleted and drained and just simply worn out. So allow yourself some rest. Allow yourself some extra quiet time. Take care of yourself as an athlete would take care of himself. And I'm not playing with you. This is serious reprogramming. And if you don't allow yourself the time to just rest and be okay with being depleted, because this is going to deplete you completely. Journal, use your journal, keep it close to you, celebrate every little victory. Every time you feel yourself with a heightened awareness of your subconscious taking over, that's a victory because you noticed it. Noticing those behaviors, it's a victory. Jot it down. One for me. I got this. Make sure that you celebrate. I don't know if you've heard the Failure to Thrive, the study that they did on orphanages. I can't even remember the year. I would like to find more information about it. But because we have a precious little in our life that was rescued from an orphanage overseas in another country, this really strikes close to home. It's been proven that children that aren't touched and aren't hugged and aren't loved and aren't celebrated, they have a failure to thrive. They've even been known to perish and to die from the lack of human contact and the lack of positive affirmation in their life. In this particular instance, retraining your brain, that is how important acknowledging yourself is. Acknowledging your victories, celebrating yourself, loving yourself, being that big sister to yourself. So when you have the smallest victory, make sure that you hug yourself and you love yourself and you let it be a victory. Do not diminish any of this because every step is huge and every step brings you one step closer to the actualization of that desired self. So I've rambled a long time today. To let y'all know, I am headed to the airport to pick up my second bestie, and that's my Kelly. She's coming to spend some time with the family here, and I can't wait to pick her up. So hopefully she'll participate on one of these videos with me. I don't know if I can get her to do that, but anyway, she's going to be here, and she always lifts my spirits and makes life a little bit better. I love all of you so very much. Melissa, I love you. I'm so glad that you're here with me today. Michael, Ann, Brent, everyone that is joining. Michelle, I love you all. Today is the first day. You guys got this. Remember, this is yours to navigate, but I am here for you. I want you to lean into me. Think of me as your tour guide, your translator, but Ultimately, the responsibility is on you, but I'm here to answer any question that you might have. So spiritual science, neuroscience, behavioral science, we've got all three. We've got the holy trinity of change, and we're going to make this happen. Welcome to phase 2. I will talk to y'all later. Have a blessed, blessed day. I'll see you tonight. Bye-bye.